Hello, International Relations classes. Going to walk you through this UN Ebola pandemic video project. Normally we do this in class, but because we're not able to meet for the rest of the school year this semester, we're just going to have to kind of fake it till we make it here. So we're still going to do it, but we're going to do it virtually in an online format, and I'm going to try to walk you through this as best I can. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me and send me an email. As I send this out to you, I'm also attaching the rubric so you can read this along as I'm kind of going through point by point. So I'm literally doing that here. So this is supposed to be a future what if kind of a thing that I've done for several years with my classes, but given the fact that we're actually living through this will make this project that much more relevant for all of us, I guess. But basically the premise goes something like this. There's an Ebola pandemic that's basically broke out in the world, and 20% of the world has basically succumbed to it. And so the way to deal with it is not through one nation trying to solve it. Okay, in other words, this is something that's much bigger than the United States. You can imagine the enormity of what we're dealing with COVID-19, amp it up several times, and you can see where you need to rely on other nations to work together to solve this. And so basically what you're going to do is you're going to take a nation, pick a nation. You've got about 195 to choose from. You're going to try to find a solution from that nation's perspective while working through the UN system. Okay, so there's some issues you have to work through. There's some problems you have to solve. Okay, again, I'm going through these A, B, C, D here in the rubric. Should the United Nations require member nations to build quarantine facilities in major population centers and develop communication plans? If so, where in the world would they be located? In other words, would you try to get all the people infected with this particular Ebola pandemic, would you try to put them all in one place, maybe an island? Madagascar was the choice that Hitler wanted to use for the final solution. Okay, you're trying to find a solution to save lives. Is there a cure for it? Possibly. We don't know. Again, this is all fictitious. But where would you put them? Would you put them in the inlands of a particular nation? Would you try to move them all into one place? Or would you require all the nations to, basically police themselves and have a particular quarantine area? It can be whatever you want. Again, you're just trying to think through various solutions. B, should the United Nations create a binding agreement that regional groups of nations, again, think the European Union, or think the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or think maybe the United States, Canada, and Mexico, or individual nations, should they, report signs of this Ebola plague, and how are you going to do it? In other words, people have to report, because if you don't report, the problem could get exponentially worse. In fact, this is exactly why we're in the pickle we're in, because China chose not to report and tried to suppress and hide this, and then suddenly before it was too late. So in other words, you're going to have to come up with how you're going to do the reporting, okay? And if somebody doesn't report, is there going to be a penalty, a monetary penalty assessed against them? If you don't think that this is a good idea, what would you suggest? Again, you could be as creative as you want with this, but again, you have to solve these problems. C, should the United Nations create some sort of worldwide Ebola outbreak training corps to prepare healthcare workers and citizens around the globe to address the outbreak? How would you do that? Okay, we're having to deal with that in Michigan right now. Okay, our governor has asked that individual citizens literally call some sort of, almost like I call it a tattletale hotline, telling on employers who are having their employees still work during the stay-at-home mandate. Okay, you might need to create something like that globally, or maybe not. Okay. Fourth of all, D, should the United Nations create an international Ebola impact fund so that poorer nations have the resources to cope with the outbreak? In other words, we talked about the International Monetary Fund, or the World Bank, in Chapter 7. It's kind of like creating a separate fund within the World Bank, or maybe a division of the IMF, to fund this. How would you do that? Okay. There's other priorities to consider. Okay. an international early warning system. Again, how do we warn other nations about this? How are we going to report this? How are we going to make sure that nations like China or nations like North Korea, the Hermit Kingdom, are forced to comply? Because again, we don't, I think, well, as of last week, Kim Jong-un was like, nope, we do not have any problems here. You know, of course, I'm using an Indian accent. That wouldn't work for North Korea. But you know what I'm saying? In other words, you're going to have to compel nations to report this so you can kind of contain it, okay? Consider what type of quarantine procedures would you do? What kind of facilities would you use? Would you use refugee centers? Again, there are a number of islands throughout the world. Perhaps you could move them to an island. Maybe not. What's the proper role of the World Health Organization? That's the WHO there in this Ebola pandemic. Are they going to have a central role? Are they not? And then finally, you know, the financial and tech responsibilities of reporting and containing this pandemic, okay? In other words, you got to think through how much is all this going to cost. You're going to propose a solution. You got to put a price tag on it. And then who's going to pay for it? Are all the nations of the world going to give, I don't know, let's just say $5 million or $5 billion or something? Or are you going to apportion it based on developed nations or undeveloped nations? You got to think through that, okay? And so what you're going to do is you're just going to work through a solution to all of these little points that I'm trying to get you to think at. And basically, you're going to look through chapters 5, 6, and 8 of the BOVA text, how the world works. Okay, again, you know, these chapters deal with, chapter 5, the United Nations, right? And then chapter 6 and chapter 8 deal with human rights issues, and then environmental degradation or some form of pandemic approaches. How do you deal with that? So basically what you're going to be doing, and again, I'm going to walk through this, is I'm asking you to use 10 terms from chapter 5 and 10 terms from chapter 6 and 10 terms from chapter 30 in your solution. You're going to create a script, okay? A script for this solution, and I want 30 terms, 10 within each chapter highlighted so I can see it clearly. How you're going to, use them. In other words, terms like the United Nations, there's one. The World Health Organization, there's another one. The World Bank, there's a third one. Okay, in other words, a lot of these are terms you've used before, but again, you're going to have to dig into chapters 6 and 8, which we haven't dealt with specifically here. Okay, and so again, the premise here is, and you can see how this works, international travel is non-existent. Okay, social distancing has been mandated. So the only way you can communicate your solution to the United Nations is each nation creates a YouTube video, or, of course, if this was the real United Nations, you go live and all that fun stuff. But the idea is you cannot actually physically interact with people. So you're gonna have to create your own video. Okay, so it's gonna be worth 75 points, as much as a test. Okay, I'm going to give you two options. Okay, you can work individually, one person, or you can work as a group. Okay, now how are you going to do groups? I encourage you, if you want to reach out to one another via the email format here within Canvas and get folks' phone numbers. You can work together and kind of have a conference call or talk to one another. And again, you can get groups of up to 4, no more than 4, and you can assign each person in your group 1/4 of the project, or if there's 3 people, 1/3, and so on and so forth, okay? So you don't have to all do the whole thing, okay? Or you can also do this individually if you so choose. I'll leave it up to you. Again, the dynamics here are totally different here, but you have to identify what nation you are and present the project accordingly. Also, you need to remember here, and I'm on page number 2 of the rubric, remember after this Sunday, April 5th, there are no more discussion posts due in this class. You're done. Okay, so in other words, I've just freed you up of the time that you would normally do discussion posts that you can devote to this project. Okay, if you're doing it by yourself, I'm asking that you submit a 3 to 5 minute video. If you want to go longer, that's fine, but of addressing this subject matter as best you can. Okay, if you're in a group, I'm asking for a 10-minute presentation. Well, how do you do that? Well, again, each person in your group can be assigned that version, and so you can just make a little 2.5 minute or 3 minute video and send me if you want to do it that way. okay? I'm also asking for you to submit to me the transcript of your presentation, again, being very, very clear to underline the 30 different terms that you're using from chapters 5, 6, and 8 so I can see that, okay? What if you can't make a video? Okay, what if you don't have the means to do it? Okay, no worries. All you need to do is submit the transcript. So if you're an individual, you can submit the transcript of your presentation. Again, you got to have the 30 terms. If you're in a group, you can kind of compile that or submit to me the individual components of it that you basically include all of it, and you can do it that way. I prefer videos, but again, if you can't do it, I give you that option, okay? All of my classes have been able to do that. And again, most of you guys are 19, 20 years old. You're far more savvy than I am. Hey, I'm good at kind of creating a YouTube video and uploading it on YouTube, and I put stuff on my Facebook page for my church, but that's the extent of my knowledge. Some of you are much better than I am. Okay, the transcript's got to be double spaced, okay? And I want to title page that lets me know what nation you are, and obviously the names of the folks in your group. You can be creative in how you do this. You can present it in the form of a news broadcast, just like on the news. Okay, you can be in the field somewhere. I think I put this, one of my students last year basically wore a ghillie suit. You're going hunting, and was literally embedded in the woods under all this underbrush. We didn't even know he was there. And they're like, okay, back to you, Bob. And then suddenly Bob, who happened to be part of the military, basically popped up in the middle of nowhere and gave his report, okay? You can be creative that way. Obviously, I don't want you to get in trouble or anything like that, but I mean, you don't have to, you can do it at your desk. You can do it at home. Obviously, if you want to do it in the backyard, that's fine too. Again, within the realm of this whole stay-at-home mandate, we've kind of got to be creative. But again, you can do things like that. And again, the terminology is anything in chapters 5, 6, and 8. I give you style points, okay? Some extra points. If you want to wear a particular hat connected to your nation, or particular clothing, or if you're eating the food connected to that nation, okay? Or if you're speaking like foreign accents, like you're someone from Soviet Union. If you choose Russia, that's a good accent that you could use, something like that. Or, oh, Mangani, I tell you what, I'm from Pakistan. We do not want to do it that way. You do accents, okay? You can make this fun. Okay, I want it to be a serious presentation, but I want you to have fun. Okay, so when is this due? This is due no later than midnight on Sunday, April 26th. Okay, midnight, Sunday, April 26th. Okay, your final exam is going to be on April 29th. Okay, so again, you're going to have from now until it's due about 3.5 weeks. Remembering, of course, you don't have to do any more discussion posts. You don't have to. You're not assigned to read chapters, although of course you're going to be jumping into chapters 5, 6, and 8. But again, that's the presentation. You can do it individually or as a group. You can submit videos. I'd love to see them. Okay, but if you can't, don't worry about it. Just submit to me the manuscript. Okay, if you have any questions about any of this, please let me know. If you're getting stuck, need some help, need some recommendations, that's fine. Just let me know and I'll be here available to do it. But again, I have found that my students tend to like this project much more so than if we were kind of hacking away at 2 more chapters and taking a test on them. What's the test going to be, the final exam? It's going to be on chapters 4, chapter 7, and chapter 9. Okay, chapters 4, 7, and 9 is our final exam. And again, I'll give you a review on that, again, in a couple of weeks. So that's our project. In my experience, most of the students that have done this and given it their level of best have gotten at least 70 points. Most of whom have actually gotten 75. So if you kind of go at it pretty hard, you're gonna probably get the highest grade on any exam, so to speak, you've gotten in this class. So again, any questions, let me know, and I'll be sending this out to you. Well, in fact, as you're watching this, you already have it. So hey, take care. Again, I wished I could be with all of you together. I thoroughly enjoy my classes in Allegan. You guys are great students. You guys are a lot of fun. And this has been a semester like no other. We will never, ever, 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 ever forget this. And one of my greatest regrets is that I couldn't get together with you and work with you in this project, because it's one of the highlights of this class that I've experienced through the years. So, okay, here you go. Questions, shoot them at me. Take care.